Hi, folks. I am Ron Morton, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on culture and ethics that I'm going to lead out with a little bit of music. Soothing music, I think, and I hope you think so too. It's good to have you, by the way.
Way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to, oh why can't I? Well, I see trees of green and red roses too. I'll watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dream that you dare to, why, oh why can't I? Ooh,
We're going to get started again here with a PowerPoint presentation. We seem to be, boy, there's always room to come up with one more PowerPoint. I like PowerPoint. You know, I think it's one of the best ways of communicating there is. I don't know how we could really improve on it all that well, maybe with more animation. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Actually, I've been planning this presentation for quite a while. But something was holding me up. And I've learned to pay attention to that when that happens. And so rather than forcing it, I just let it ride for a couple of days. And then I got it. It's something that I feel like I need to say. And that's we have a culture, I believe that. And to a degree, I'm going to try to prove it to you. But one of the things that culture doesn't include in terms of ethics is a clear enough statement on religion and spirituality. And really what I'm saying to everybody is think about it. You know, is spirituality a big part of your life? What is it that has kept you on the road to recovery? As that's something pretty much everybody does. How do we feel about religion, say, on our Facebook group? I think these things need to be talked about in relation to our values, if not necessarily to our culture as a whole. So I want you to think about that. We're going to talk more about culture, but I wanted to tell you a story. My sponsor, his name was Jewel Johnson. He's gone now. He's a great old guy from Oklahoma, and he was always pulling me aside, giving me chunks of wisdom. And I don't know that I knew that that's what those were then, but I learned later on. And one day he says, let me tell you a story. He says, there was this guy coming out of an AA meeting at a church, big church. And he was walking out of the meeting and walking down the sidewalk, and he saw a nun coming. And seeing a kind of a strangely synchronistic moment, he stopped her and asked her a question. He said, sister, what do you think makes 12-step programs work? And she didn't even have to think about it. She looked up at him and said, it pleases God. It does. It's a big part of recovery. Now, having said that, it's not a necessary part of everybody's recovery, because recovery is individual in nature and self-directed by our ethics and principles that guide us in the recovery movement. I think it's time to start having a conversation. Now I'm going to tune into our PowerPoint here. Culture and ethics, peer support in Tennessee. Why is it important? I know somebody out there would be raising their hand if they could. And I would be addressing them and say, tell us, what do you think it is? Why is it important? Well, it's important because it helps us keep our peers safe. By following the ethics, we have a map for what we can't or shouldn't do. And I'm going to give you a value-based reason for believing that later in the presentation, I hope. It's good to know ethics, because one of these days you're going to be in a situation where somebody is ethically compromised and you're going to be asked to give testimony, maybe. So you want to be aware of it, and you want to address the issues as soon as you possibly can. One of the biggest mistakes that happens in the field of behavioral health is when folks take too long to address an issue. No matter how small they are, they should be addressed immediately. Unless there's some triage process that's in place. If you got that many problems in your organization, you got some issues. So it's a way to protect yourself by knowing what standards you will be held to when the time comes, if it comes. It's not going to come to everybody, but it happens enough that we need to be aware that it could happen. I'm going to look at a couple of definitions here, and I'm not going to say a whole lot about the first one. This one was written by somebody like me for somebody like me because we're special. The next one makes sense. Interesting, isn't it? Customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Native culture, as an example. Native culture is made up of a lot of different things. I know because I'm Native. And it's those things that the tribe believe as a whole that are the values of that tribe. And the values of one tribe may not be the same as the values of the next tribe. But they're there nonetheless. Passed down word of mouth or written down, painted in some cultures. Are we a people? It says the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Are we a people? I don't know that we know each other well enough yet to say that, but it should be a goal. It really should. Are we a social institution? Only to the degree that we work in programs that may in some way be funded by a state holding federal grants. Best way to describe it quickly. Do we as a group have achievements? I think we do. This conference is an achievement. The awards are an achievement. They continue to be an achievement. Do we have custom and arts that we claim as ours collectively? Would we call what shows up on the Facebook page, would we call that recovery art? There's room for that, I think. Is anybody calling anything recovery art? Should have looked it up on the internet. Well, we got it, whether we know it or not. We got it. Do we have customs and arts that we claim as ours collectively? Do we have customs? We got at least one. We go to this conference every year. And I projected some farther into the presentation, and you'll see. Are we a social group? Yeah, we are. We're on Facebook page. We have a Facebook group. By the way, we now have, I think, 500, pretty near 500 people in the Facebook group. And invariably, when I bring it up in discussion, people ask about TAPS. TAPS is the, as a matter of fact, we're having a meeting this week, and this will be, I think, probably about 10 days from when this presentation is shown. To discuss how we want to acquire new board members. We're finding we need to be clear about what we do and about what the requirements are for a board member. So keep your ear to the railroad track, because we'll be talking more about that. But I would say to you, yeah, we are definitely a social group. How do we get here? Culture is about shared values. I can prove that to you, but I think it's easy enough for you to accept. Our values and the systems we work with help us to develop things like ethics. And ethics to a large degree affect other things like operating policies and procedures, employment practices that require a company to be fair in their dealings with an employee. There are things that tie us together. We have things that attract us to other people. You know, I love being able to sit down and have a conversation with an open-minded person, even if they don't agree with me. Maybe especially if they disagree with me. As long as they don't treat me like I'm stupid, then we're okay. Until somebody treats me like I'm stupid, then we're not okay. Yeah, we're not talking about romance here. We're talking about wanting to go fishing with the guy because you got something in common with it. Or go shopping with your friend Rita because you guys like the same color clothes. Somebody in your life that you go to? There is in mine. More than one, I'd say. And the attributes that they have are the reasons that I would go to them, because not everybody has the same attributes. It would be great if you could find one person that it's 100%, yeah, you up and down the line, and then that would bore you to death and result in prison time, probably. Values are a culture standard for discerning what is good and just. Thank God. Most professional fields have their ethics or something like that. And we set up organizations to make sure that those ethics, that we abide by those ethics. There are ethics boards. There are a whole entire organizations developed just to looking after the rights of nurses who have been accused of substance abuse. But we say don't use drugs. We say don't steal drugs. And sadly, some people have to have that spelled out to them. And we do that with the disciplinary system. Values are deeply embedded. Yes, they are. I am an Indian. It is deeply embedded in me. You can't take it out of me without killing me. You'd have to kill me. And I share these values with other Indian people who have some of the same cultural preferences that I do, and whose morals resonate with mine. Moving along here. Ethics and values. For each ethic, I'm going to come up with a value because we can't come up with value, and that would take a whole lot of time anyway, because there's, you know, like 20 of these suckers, and some of them are ginormous. So, but this is one of our responsibilities as peer support specialists, is to do something ethical, like listen to an ethics presentation. Primary responsibility of certified peer recovery specialists is to help peers achieve their own needs, wants, and goals. Value. We help others as someone once helped us. I might have walked into an AA meeting alone, but I didn't stay that way. Didn't stay that way. I went into a double trouble in recovery meeting one time alone. I didn't stay that way. There were lots of people who had double trouble with recovery. Lots. And we hung together. Certified peer recovery specialists will maintain high standards of personal and professional conduct. We're good people. I really sincerely believe we're good people. And we don't want to do things to draw negative attention. I've actually never known anybody like that. Except maybe one or two. But we're not like that. As a group, we're not like that. That's my sense of a value of this group. And that's that we want to be viewed as successful. We want to be viewed as intelligent. We want to be viewed as honest and caring. That's just some of them, you know, but they're good ones. We don't want the world to see us in a negative light. We don't want to embarrass the world. We want the world to be proud of us. Certified peer recovery specialists will conduct themselves in a manner that fosters their own recovery. Value. We should take care of ourselves. We cannot help with the pain of others if we are in pain ourselves. You ever try to bandage a broken wrist when you have a broken wrist? Probably wouldn't do that. That would probably hurt a lot. So we got to look after ourselves. We're fortunate we have ways to do that. Number one, we work with peers. You know, if you're working with somebody, you know, they're an employee of volunteer behavioral health, and you're an employee of volunteer behavioral health, and wouldn't you want to be available to each other to help? Or if you're a peer working for TMHCA, knowing that you can go to other peers at TMHCA to talk about stuff, that's a heck of a benefit, you know? It really is. Certified peer recovery specialists will openly share with peers, other CPRSs, and non-peers their recovery stories from mental illness, substance abuse, or co-occurring disorders as appropriate for the situation in order to promote recovery and resiliency. By telling the story of who we are, we instill hope in others. Without hope, there is no recovery. I really believe that. That's why we work so hard to build it. But you notice here that it says appropriate. There's no word appropriate there. It's an appropriate word, appropriate, because it's appropriate for what we're talking about. Appropriate. Telling your story could be appropriate in a lot of different contexts, except maybe not at grandma's, never mind. I mean, there's situations where you don't want to be sharing your story. It's just not appropriate. And there's people it's not appropriate to share them to. We have to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of ourselves. It has to be a focused, concerted effort. Because somebody may someday ask you, first, they'll ask you, what were you thinking? And then they'll ask you, what were you doing to take care of yourself? You're a role model too. Always remember that. Certified peer recovery specialists at all times will respect the rights and dignity of those they serve. Yes, many of us have been treated as though we didn't have any rights, and thus our dignity as human beings suffered. We will not let that happen to those we serve, either through our own actions or the actions of others, no matter how well-meaning they are. Well-meaning people can do damage sometimes. Certified peer recovery specialists, Certified peer recovery specialists will never intimidate, threaten, harass, or use undue influence, use physical force or verbal abuse, or make unwarranted promises of benefits to the individuals they serve. Well, I guess what's common, you know, amongst all these is you could end up getting pummeled by fists with each one of them. Because I really got to address the last one the most. People do this, you know. Professionals have been known to invite clients to invest in their company. I'm not talking about going to a party. Stuff like this happens, and then it creates a major conflict, and everything in the world hits the fan. Careers, jobs, marriages. Oh man, all kinds of stuff happen. So, we will do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Yeah, we're not going to put people in threatened financial positions. No, we don't do that. Why would you even think about doing that? I don't know. 7, certified peer recovery specialists will not practice, condone, facilitate, collaborate in any form of discrimination or harassment based on ethnicity, race, color, pregnancy, creed, veteran status, sex, sexual orientation, age, religion, national origin, marital status, political belief, mental or physical disability, or any other category protected by state and or federal civil rights laws. And I didn't say it that way to be a wise guy. I said it to you that way because it's got to be clear. It has to be said, and it has to be said clearly. No discrimination. No. Many of us have existed on the edges of society because of discrimination. Maybe you were discriminated against because you were Black or Native American or had a mental illness. Yeah, that happened, didn't it? You know it happened. It happened to a lot of people. It's happened to a lot of people. They went from locking you in huge rooms and mental hospitals, cut you loose to live on the streets amongst the rats. Thank God we've gotten a lot better. A lot better. Well, I would hate to see us ever go back to those days. So we don't discriminate. Certified peer recovery specialists will promote self-direction and decision-making for those they serve. A value. We know the strength of self-determination, and we treasure it, and we preserve it for others. You'll hear it someday. We're just setting her up to fail. Well, she has the right to self-direction. And if she fails, she'll do what everybody else does when they fail. They'll learn from it. Go back and start over. Right? That's self-determination. And we can stand in the way of that really, really easily because we're well-meaning. Well, she was well-meaning. She was, but she wasn't cut out to work with people with mental illnesses and behavioral health. She was an art teacher. She was a great art teacher. She really was. So we all vote in favor of self-direction. Certified peer recovery specialists will respect the privacy and confidentiality of those they serve. Having had our own privacy betrayed, we will not let that happen to those we serve. And this happened to me. I was working as a research assistant. And one evening, I told one of my co-research assistant buddies a little bit about my past. And the next day I got called into the research director's office and I was told they didn't want me around because of all those things that had happened to me, that I had caused to happen to me, I guess, to be honest. They did what they had to do. I know that, but it really hurt. Really hurt. It was really embarrassing. So we don't do that to people. Certified peer recovery specialists will promote and support services that foster full integration of individuals into the communities of their choice. You know, it's tough sometimes finding sites for things like peer support centers and group homes, because people don't want them in their backyard. They sure as heck don't want any of us living next to them. And so that probably puts the halt on a lot of things that would benefit people in terms of housing. And sadly, you know, some of the reasons that people complain are true, because not all the people who run the group homes are doing the right thing all the time. They're not. So we need to understand that, but we also need to understand that, you know, if you can get a person into a community like yours, might that be their choice? Yeah, although that would create the potential for a dual relationship, but helping them find a community like yours. This is a story for you. I used to talk about spirituality at the Recovery Center at Peninsula. And I talked about my faith and what I believe, and told them all what church I go to. And next thing I knew, I saw him popping up in church. And you know, I was a little nonplussed by it at first, but then I said, wait a minute. These are my friends. Why wouldn't I want them to come to my church? Of course I want them to come to my church. I mean, I was there, right? So if I was there, they could be there. And they did. And they got involved in the choir and volunteer programs, all kinds of stuff. It was great. It was really good. Certified peer recovery specialists will be directed by the knowledge that all individuals have the right to live and function in the least restrictive and least intrusive environment. Lots of us been tied down or strapped down. I don't know if one is better than the other. I've never been in a straitjacket. I don't think. Maybe. But I have been strapped down. That was so degrading. You know, it was really degrading. And I avoided it with other people every time I could. Our movement's been restricted from time to time. Locked ward in a hospital unit. Not allowed to go out after 10 o'clock at night. Not able to go to the store. Lots of things. We know we need to be proactive on these issues. We need to talk about restraints and how they're used. They should never be our first choice, ever. You know, you don't go from patient coming through the door to restraints. that's going to happen, they usually come in restraints. But that's a terrible thing to see. It really is. Certified peer recovery specialists will not enter into dual relationships or commitments that conflict with the interests of those they serve. We recognize the power we have in relation to another human being who is suffering, not just a person with a mental illness, but anyone who is suffering. If you're not suffering, you have power in that relationship, and you got to use it the right way. We will never let that power be construed as a way to satisfy our own needs for closeness, either physical or emotional. I know people get lonely. Some of you out there right now are saying you're lonely. I know, and it sucks. But we protect the people we serve. Certified peer recovery specialists will never engage in a sexual or inappropriate activity with peers they serve. You can't be in a therapeutic relationship with somebody if you're screwing them. Sorry. And pardon my language, but that's the reality of it. You know? You can't be having sex with the person that you're serving. You're trying to help them. And man, if you want to see the universe come down hard on somebody, this is one of them that the universe comes down hard on. And I'm not all about fearing this stuff. I just want you to know. I really want you to know, because I've seen what happens. Career destroyed, marriage destroyed, relationships in general destroyed because they're too ashamed to continue to make contact with their friends. Imagine what that's like. Ah. We know if we have sex with one of our clients, we're endangering them. And if you don't know that, trust me. Certified peer recovery specialists will not use illegal substances, misuse alcohol, or other drugs. Because we're role models. We have people that love us. We have people that love us just because we're who we are. You know that. You got people who love you just because you're who you are. That's a wonderful thing. And a hell of a responsibility. Because that means that most of the time we're going to put them before us. Maybe even times when we shouldn't. But that's what we're led to do by who we are. We know we're role models. As such, we can never forget that substance abuse is a flight from reality. We must role model behaviors that are healthy and dignify the mental state of those we serve. It is an issue of trust. Yeah. It is an issue of trust. It is. Certified peer recovery specialists will keep current with emerging knowledge relevant to recovery and will share this knowledge with other certified peer recovery specialists. We will probably never know enough about ourselves and or the field we work in. Therefore, we must always be ready to learn new approaches and techniques. How many of you know the latest numbers on opiate overdose deaths in Tennessee? Some of you are going to know that information. Thank you. Some of you are not going to know that information. But all of you are going to be dealing with somebody at some point who's got a substance abuse problem. And there may be information that you need. How many of you know what Narcan is? Narcan can save somebody's life. And if you don't know about it, then you need to find out. These are things that help our peers survive. Now you can talk about Narcan because you know about it. You've been educated. Certified peer recovery specialists will not accept gifts of significant value from those they serve. It's a really dangerous thing because there are misunderstandings that happen. And if there's a lot of money, there's a lot of misunderstanding. You know, Jane Doe comes into your office and she's an old lady and she's about to die and she wants you to have $20,000 to pay for graduate school. And you say, okay, sure. Where do I sign? No, you don't say that. And what you say is you say, no, I can't accept that. Thank you so much for wanting to help me. But no, I can't accept that. You're talking to Joe the mechanic. He just dropped off a Ford Econoline van that you're using to transport folks. And you're talking to him about the trailer hitch on the back. And you just happen to say, hey, you know, I've been looking for someone to put a trailer hitch on mine. And Joe the mechanic, who's going to get paid by the company, says, oh, hey, man, just come on by. I'll take care of that for you. No. No. You don't do that. You know? Maybe somebody you're working with is a mechanic and wants to come over and work on your car just because they like you. No. Can't do that. Certified peer recovery specialists will not provide services either for employment or on a volunteer basis without supervision. I'm supervised. I have a great supervisor. She may even watch this video. So I'm really glad I said that she's a really great supervisor. Now, she really is. Brooke McCulley. She's really good at what she does. I'm really happy to work for her. And Rhonda Roper. They're my two bosses. They're good folks. They really are. I'm really lucky working for Blue Cross Blue Shield. But we're all supervised in some fashion, so get over it. You got to be supervised. It's just the way that it is. And we have, you know, licensing that requires that supervision. Not everybody gets the license. No, you can't hang a shingle yet. There's some folks who want to. Don't know if it'll ever happen. But you have to be supervised. And that means that that person has to have gone through the supervision class with TDMH SAS. I understand it's very grueling, and they have to volunteer in the community for 500 hours. And that's none of that true at all. I'm joking. Trying to joke. You know, doing one of these kind of presentations like this is really pretty dry. But the whole point is it's a way to protect the people we serve. We want to protect the people we serve. We continue to do that no matter what. Certified peer recovery specialists will not provide services beyond their qualifications. This includes diagnosing an illness, prescribing medications, or providing clinical services. You're talking to Jake Doe, and Jake says, well, I'm really having a problem with this antidepressant that I'm on. And you want to help. So you say, well, I'm on Prozac. Maybe you should try that. No, don't do that. I'm talking about it because it's happened. And that can be construed as practicing pharmacy. So don't do that. None of you are going to do these things unless something really weird is going on, because you're all decent people. You're talking to somebody and they're talking about having hallucinations, and this and that, and you just know they have schizophrenia, but they've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And you say something along the line of, have you ever looked into the possibility that you have schizophrenia versus bipolar disorder? Is that your role? No, not your role. Your role is to be the good person that you are and get them to somebody who specializes in that area, like a pharmacist, psychiatrist, psychologist, depending on what the disorder is. And you may want to say to one of the doctors what you think about the diagnosis. And I want to be there when you do. So be careful with that stuff. No drugs, no diagnoses. Certified peer recovery specialists shall only provide services and support within the hours, days, and locations that are authorized by the TDMH SAS approved agency with which they work. All right, let me talk about some realities here. TDMH helps us to get certified. Organizations can't provide peer support services unless their peer support specialists are certified. That's mandated by the federal government. And especially in Medicaid, those services are reimbursed through TennCare, but you can't just start charging for services. There have to be things in place, like licenses. And so TDMH SAS takes care of a very critical part of that. That's the certification of peers, as well as working on other things, expanding the peer movement in Tennessee, expanding peer training in Tennessee. So we're always going to honor and support their mandates, regulations, requirements, all of that. Unless there's some god-awful reason that you can't. It's hard for me to visualize, but I guess it can happen. If TDMH SAS was taken over by the Russian underground, never mind. Are these your values as a peer recovery specialist? I thought a lot about them. I did. I thought a lot about them. And probably the values should have come before the ethics. But those ethics were based on someone's values somewhere. And somebody said, You know, those are pretty good ethics. Why don't we hang our hat on those? And so we have. But I think it's really, really critical that we always examine the underlying values and make sure that they make sense to us, that those are our values, because they're not always going to be. You may disagree with something, but are you willing to put up with it in order to satisfy all the others? Maybe not. You might have to walk away. That happens. People walk away from things because somebody's not doing things right. But your ideas are not going to be the same as mine, and you may have different ideas. This is just, kind of a place for us to collectively start to hammer some things out that I think we're going to have to hammer out. There's plenty of time. There's no rush to get all this done, and we can have a lot of folks talking. Point is, values are the basis of our culture. And when I say our culture, I'm saying certified peer recovery specialist culture. And which leads me to also say that if you're going to join a national peer organization, make sure that your values are the same as theirs. Really important. But if these are values that you can live with, and you can begin to voice them clearly, which I think you all have probably at one time or another in your life, then we're going to be able to see changes because people will know who we are. If we have values, we know something about who we are, and that means other people can know who we are. That's a good thing. It's a really good thing because it'll expand access to services. And we also want to let the world know we got a future. And we need to talk about what we want to be. We are a movement. What does that movement entail? Depends on who you talk to. I'm really happy to have been able to do this presentation, and I think we're going to have time for questions. So this one is going to end, and then we'll be doing questions.